If I could only give every person over 61 single piece of advice, not a supplement, not a diet plan, not a medical procedure, just one thing that the research most consistently and most convincingly shows will protect your joints, preserve your independence, strengthen your bones, improve your balance, and genuinely change the trajectory of how you age physically, it would be the exercise I am going to share with you today. And I want to be upfront with you from the start. When I tell you what it is, your first reaction may be that it sounds too simple, too ordinary, that surely something this powerful must be more complicated, more demanding, more impressive looking than this. I understand that reaction completely. I have seen it on patients' faces in my office many times. But I want you to stay with me through the full explanation, because once you understand what this exercise is actually doing inside your body, the specific physiological effects that make it so uniquely valuable for adults over 60, I promise you will never think of it as ordinary again. The exercise is the squat, specifically a controlled, modified, chair-assisted squat that is safe and accessible for virtually every adult regardless of current fitness level, current joint condition, or how long it has been since you last exercised consistently. Before you tell me your knees are too bad, or your balance is too unreliable, or that squatting is something you gave up years ago, I need you to hear what I mean by this, because the version I am going to describe is almost certainly different from what you are imagining. Let me start with why. Why does the research point so consistently to this particular movement above all others for adults in this age group? The squat, when performed correctly and within an appropriate range of motion, simultaneously engages the quadriceps, the hamstrings, the gluteal muscles, the hip flexors, the calf muscles, the muscles of the lower back, and the core stabilizers. It is the most comprehensive lower body movement available to the human body, and those muscle groups are not just important for fitness. They are the specific muscles that protect your knees and hips from the inside, absorb the impact of daily movement, maintain your upright posture, and most critically, keep you from falling. There is no other single exercise that addresses this entire system simultaneously with such efficiency. Research published in multiple peer-reviewed journals examining muscle mass and function in adults over 60 has identified the quadriceps, the large muscles of the front thigh, as one of the single strongest predictors of functional independence in later life. Not cardiovascular fitness, not flexibility, quadriceps strength. Adults with stronger quadriceps at 60 show lower rates of knee osteoarthritis progression, lower rates of hip fracture, faster recovery from illness and surgery, better balance scores, and significantly lower all-cause mortality. And the squat, more than any other accessible exercise, directly builds and maintains quadriceps strength in a functional weight-bearing context that transfers directly to the movements of real daily life. Standing up from a chair, getting in and out of a car, climbing stairs, picking something up from a low shelf. But there is something even more specific about the squat that makes it uniquely valuable for joint health, and it is something most people, including many fitness professionals, do not fully appreciate. The controlled lowering phase of a squat, the sitting down portion, places the quadriceps under what is called eccentric load. This is the condition where a muscle is lengthening while simultaneously contracting to control movement. In this case, your quadriceps are working hard to slow your descent rather than to power you upward. Eccentric loading is the most potent stimulus for muscle fiber repair, tendon strengthening, and the specific type of muscle development that protects joints from impact. It is also, notably, the type of loading that is most lacking in typical daily life as we age, because most older adults instinctively avoid slow, controlled lowering movements in favor of dropping quickly into chairs or using their arms to manage the descent. That avoidance, repeated thousands of times over years, is one of the primary reasons the protective muscles around the knee and hip weaken so significantly after 50. I also want to tell you what the squat does for your bones, because this is another dimension of its value that is frequently overlooked. Bone density, which declines after 50 in both men and women, and more rapidly in women after menopause, responds to mechanical loading, specifically to the compression forces that weight-bearing exercises place on the bones. The squat places significant and beneficial compressive load on the femur, the tibia, the hip joint, and the lumbar spine simultaneously. This is the type of stimulus that signals bone-forming cells to maintain, and in some cases, increase bone density. The alternatives, swimming, cycling, and other low-impact activities that are often recommended for seniors with joint pain, are genuinely valuable for cardiovascular health and joint mobility, but they do not provide adequate compressive loading to stimulate bone maintenance. The modified squat does. Now let me describe exactly how to perform this correctly, because form is everything. A poorly executed squat can aggravate knee pain. A correctly executed one almost invariably reduces it over time, and the version I'm about to describe is specifically designed for safety, accessibility, and maximum benefit. You are going to use a sturdy chair, not as something to sit into carelessly, but as your guide and safety net. Place the chair behind you, stand in front of it with your feet approximately hip-width apart, and your toes pointing slightly outward, about 15 to 20 degrees, which is the natural alignment of the hip joint and reduces rotational stress on the knee. From this position, you are going to begin to sit down onto the chair, but slowly and in full control. Shift your weight back slightly into your heels as you descend, not forward onto your toes. Let your arms reach gently forward as a counterbalance if needed. Lower yourself over a count of 3 to 4 seconds until you just barely make contact with the seat of the chair. You are touching down, not collapsing into it. Then immediately, and with control, stand back up over a count of 2 seconds, driving through your heels and squeezing your glutes as you return to standing. That is the movement. Sit down slowly, stand up deliberately. The chair removes the fear of falling and controls the depth of the movement. The slow lowering is where the eccentric loading occurs. The heel drive on the way up ensures the gluteal muscles are properly activated rather than the movement being driven entirely by the knees. Start with 5 repetitions. Rest briefly. Perform a second set of 5, that is 10 repetitions total, which for someone beginning from a low baseline of strength is an entirely appropriate starting point. Over 2 to 3 weeks, as the movement becomes more comfortable and the muscles begin to respond, increase to 2 sets of 10. Over the following weeks, 2 sets of 15. The progression is gradual because the adaptation you are building, genuine muscle fiber development, tendon strengthening, neural coordination, takes time and cannot be rushed without risking injury. There are 2 important technique points I want to emphasize because these are the most common errors I see, and both of them matter significantly for knee safety. The first is that your knees should track over your second and third toes throughout the movement, not collapse inward toward each other, which is called knee valgus, and places damaging lateral stress on the knee joint. If you notice your knees falling inward as you lower or rise, consciously push them outward slightly, imagining you are trying to spread the floor with your feet. This is a gluteal activation cue as much as a form correction. When the glutes are properly engaged, they naturally prevent the knees from collapsing inward. The second technique point is to keep your chest reasonably upright throughout the movement. The natural tendency when lowering into a squat is to lean the torso forward excessively, which shifts the center of gravity forward, transfers more load onto the knees, and reduces gluteal engagement. A slight forward lean is normal and necessary. Your torso does not need to be perfectly vertical. But if your chest is dropping dramatically toward your knees on the way down, try holding your hands on your hips or crossing them at your chest to cue your upper body to stay more lifted. I want to address the question of knee pain during this exercise directly because it is the most common concern and it deserves a careful answer. For the majority of people with osteoarthritis or general knee discomfort, a properly performed chair squat to a modest depth, meaning you are not lowering all the way down to a 90-degree knee bend, but rather to a shallower angle where the chair catches you, is not only safe but is a direct part of the rehabilitation approach recommended by physiotherapists for knee osteoarthritis. The strengthening of the quadriceps and surrounding muscles that this exercise produces reduces the net load on the joint surface and typically reduces pain over a 4 to 8 week period of consistent practice. However, and I want to be clear about this, if you experience sharp, acute pain during the movement, not the discomfort of muscle effort, but sharp, localized joint pain, stop the movement and consult your doctor or physiotherapist before continuing. There are specific knee conditions, including certain presentations of meniscal damage and inflammatory arthritis flares, where modification or medical guidance is appropriate before beginning any loading exercise. The chair squat is safe and beneficial for most people, but most does not mean all, and the right approach is always to know your specific situation. For those who find even the chair squat uncomfortable at first, there is a simpler starting point that I use with patients who are very deconditioned or who have significant joint pain. It is called a sit to stand, and it is simply this. From a seated position in your chair, stand up as slowly and as controlled as possible without using your hands on the armrests. That is it. The chair is already underneath you. You are not lowering into a new position, you are simply practicing the controlled, muscle-driven act of standing up from seated. Even this simple version, practiced daily, begins to rebuild the quadriceps and gluteal strength that makes the full chair squat progressively more accessible. I want to close with something that I think reframes this exercise in the most useful possible way. Every time you lower yourself slowly into a chair and rise from it with control, you are practicing the most fundamental movement of functional independence. The ability to stand up unassisted from a chair, from a toilet, from a car seat, from the floor if necessary, is one of the clearest dividing lines in later life between those who remain independent and those who do not. It is a movement that most people take entirely for granted until the day they realize it has become difficult. And by then, the muscle loss that made it difficult has usually been progressing quietly for years. You do not have to wait for that day. You can practice this movement right now, today, in your own home, with a chair you already own, in 5 minutes. And if you do it every single day, not occasionally, not when you remember, but every day, the cumulative effect on your strength, your joint health, your balance, and your confidence in your own body is one of the most powerful investments available to you at this stage of life. Start today. 5 repetitions, 2 sets, 1 chair. That is all it takes to begin. Thank you for being here on Mobility Matters. Drop a comment below telling me whether you already do any form of squat or sit to stand practice and how it feels for you. I read every comment and I genuinely want to know. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and I will see you in the next video.